Whew. We're about to have a difficult conversation. Thankfully, not as difficult as the conversations we've had recently that were a lot harder, a lot sadder. This is just video games, but it's still like a touchy subject, and it's been a touchy subject for the entire 13 years I've done YouTube. But it just popped up again, and so I want to talk to you about it. And I want to get your genuine thoughts, and I want you to really think about this and figure out what would be best. Okay, so basically video games are expensive. Switch games are expensive, Xbox and PlayStation games are more expensive, and games cost a lot of money. Thankfully, we got services like Game Pass and in some ways Switch Online, like the expansion pack, that allow us to access more games than normally we'd be able to access. There's a lot of good demos, a lot of good sales, but games are still expensive. It's hard to be a fan of the hobby and play everything. And yet, in many ways, games are the cheapest they've ever been. Games have been stuck at the $60 price point, barring the next gen $70, of course, but they've been stuck at $60 for the better part of 2 decades. It's a long time. All right, we have had games stuck at this price, thankfully, for a while, for many generations. And with what games cost to make now, that's skyrocketed, and yet the price of what games cost us to buy has not. And this really came to a head because Gotham Knights, the upcoming Batman, not Batman game, right? It's the new game from WB and it's multiplayer and all that jazz. It does not have 60 frames per second, right? It has 30 frames per second. And people were really bummed that this is a next gen only game because remember, Gotham Knights got rid of the last gen versions because they said like it just wasn't running great and we want to make the best game possible for our fans. But it's 30, and people have taken extreme issue that like they can't get this game at 60. It's on next-gen consoles. Why is this happening? And Lee DeVonald, who is a senior technical artist at Rocksteady. Now, he didn't directly work on Gotham Knights, but you know that Rocksteady, they're the Batman people. So Lee is very connected to this franchise and probably to this game in more ways than one. Didn't necessarily work directly on it, but he knows this team, he's familiar with the franchise. But $60 in 2000 is $93 now due to inflation. Now I fact checked this and I did it myself, the calculation, and based on the calculator I used, $60 in 2000 is $97 now. We're undercharging you for games and have been for 2 decades, Lee continues. We're undercharging you for games and have been for 20 years. Pay us what we're worth. Now, maybe that's a little bit bolder and more bravado than I would have ever used, but I see his point. You know, we always have people complaining about the game doesn't look good enough, the game doesn't run well enough, can't believe the developers held it back, and Lee is making a point here that it's not so much the ability of the developer, but yet the budget of the game. Now, this was continued, or sort of, I guess, built upon by an interesting tweet I read from Jeff Grubb. We know him, Nintendo leaker, reporter guy. People were talking about feeling underwhelmed by the visual jump on PS5 and Xbox Series X, and Jeff said, everyone has been trying to tell you for years that the hardware isn't the limiting factor anymore. Visual fidelity is far more limited by time and money. You want a game to look Marvel movie good? You're gonna have to throw $500 million at it. That's just the fact. It's money. And so then you go back to what Lee said, $60 in 2000 is now $97 today. We're undercharging you for games and have been for 2 decades. Pay us what we're worth. Again, a little bit contentious there, but the point he's trying to make is if you want your game to run at 60, we need more dough. And you could say like, that's ridiculous. Games should never go up in price. Zach, what are you even talking about? No. And I'm not advocating for games to go up in price. I'm merely presenting Lee's argument and kind of the state of affairs. I agree that there have been diminishing returns. Like, next-gen games don't look as good as next-gen games from a generation or 2 generations ago. Like, the PS4 to PS5 difference, it's there. It's not huge. And I've played multiple hours of Gotham Knights. Visually, it doesn't wow me. It doesn't scream next-gen. But Lee is saying that this is because games don't cost more. And I wonder if you would be willing to pay $80 if that meant that the game would run at 60 frames per second. Now, You're saying, well, I shouldn't have to sacrifice more money just so that they can do a better job. But what Lee and Jeff Grubb and others are trying to kind of bring to light is it's not doing a better job. It's they don't have the money and the time to put into this to make that kind of stuff happen. I've never fully understood it myself, but games are one of the most complex creations on the face of the earth. Like, we just have to accept that. So many moving parts, so much room for error. It's not a movie. You can't just go tell Benedict Cumberbatch to say this and act this, and you know he's going to do it because he's a top-tier talent. You've got an artificial intelligence thing, NPC, and you're trusting that it won't bug out when variable X and, nuance 27,000 happens. They are crazy complicated machines. The fact that they're able to run as well as they do is kind of miraculous. And they cost more than ever. And people deserve to be paid more than before. Inflation obviously means wages should go up, but if the budget of games isn't rising crazy because the cost of games is staying the same, you're between a rock and a hard place. What do you do? What do you do? And you can think about this for Switch as well, because sooner than later, Switch is going to add visual fidelity. There will be a better Switch at some point. And it also just impacts the games we have on Switch, because look, stuff like Bayonetta 3 is coming out, and we've talked about how it's not running at a solid 60. Is it because they're not good enough? They don't care enough? They don't work hard enough? Absolutely not. Developers are some of the hardest working people I've ever seen, and you hear that comment echoed by many different sources. Like, they put the work in. They sleep at their desk. They're trying their best for us. They just don't have the time and money. And so you gotta think, like, if we want much better games, we might have to pay more. And we actually are in a different arena, the indie scene. Have you noticed that this year, the typical indie big release is now 30 instead of 20? Like, they have bumped up the price sort of subtly because they got wiggle room. We're used to paying 60 for a game, so if you go 20 to 30, you're like, it's still 50%. This is still great. And indie games are better than ever, right? The devs there are so creative, so ingenious, amazing work being done, many times even more fun than the big AAA games. But they've had a price increase. And if you look at their price value, right, forget it's $30, but from 20 to 30 is increasing by 50%. That would be like a $60 game costing $90. And maybe it's not one-to-one, but I'm just giving you some things to think about. Would you be willing to pay $80 for your video game so that you could have 60 frames per second, so that the graphics could be more impressive? And I already can hear one rebuttal, which is, well, it doesn't guarantee it. And it doesn't. It does not guarantee it. You still will have some games that look crummy. You still will have some games that oscillate 30 to 50 to 58, 60. But it would give developers, and especially the good ones, more of an opportunity to put more pedal to the metal. And they could deliver games that are more impressive technically, better playing games than what we have right now. But it's got to come from somewhere. Let me tell you, the executives at Square Enix and at Warner Brothers and at Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, they're not going to just say, we'll take less profits. They will not. So where does the money come from? The money has to come from the price increase of the game, and that's why you're seeing certain stuff cost $70. They've got nowhere to go. They've been backed into a corner. Tech is pushing forward. Costs are pushing forward. Inflation is going up. And they want to make games that wow us, that impress us, that review well. How do they do that? It's not an issue of talent many times. It's not an issue of desire and willpower many times. It's an issue of time and money. And so I think pay us what we're worth is interesting. They're making better games than ever before. They look better. They're deeper. They're longer. They're more expansive. They're more replayable. I don't know, guys and girls. I don't want to pay more. Nobody does. Who wants to see a price hike? Who's voting for a price hike? Well, maybe one of you are. I don't know. But Lee's points made me think. And Jeff Grubb's comments that I've heard other places as well made me think. If what's holding back games is money, dollar signs, and time, well, we got to give devs more time, and we got to find a way to give devs more money. And we could say, billionaires, take less profits. But trust me, we try that in every area, and it does not seem to work. Sucks, not right, doesn't seem to work. The execs aren't going to take less. The only way to do this is to raise the price. And that's why you're seeing 70, and that's why you'll probably continue to see 70. And that's why I've said, don't be surprised if there's a Switch Pro with a version of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom that costs $70. Because we're at a point, and I feel like developers and publishers, they know it's been 2 decades of this price, and everything has just rocketed forward. the demands, the expectations, the tech, the cost, the team sizes. The team members need to eat. We need this to be where they're paid well, so they want to work in these fields, and so they are excited and inspired, and we don't have so much turnover. We don't have people quitting and getting burned out. It is a big, big, big dilemma. There's like kind of a social dilemma part of it. There's a financial dilemma. There's like a moral obligation to support people dilemma. What do we do? If you have another solution, I'd love to hear it. I don't see another way except games going up in price, or they don't, and we're okay. We have to be okay when, Warner Brothers Montreal comes out and says, hey, sorry, it's 30. We couldn't do 60. Not because we suck, but we're out of time and money. Fascinating stuff. There's been a lot of just stories that have just rippled through my mind lately that are just tantalizing about the gaming industry, having me think in ways that I haven't, at least not lately. Lee, I feel for you, man. I think maybe you said this in a moment of frustration, but I can't say you're wrong. I get what you're saying, and now I want to get what you're saying too. Should we raise the price of games so they can be better, so developers can be paid more? And do you agree with Lee's comments of pay us what we're worth? They're putting their butts on the line and busting it to bring you beautiful, brilliant games that are better and bigger than anything we've played before. Same dang cost. Let me know what you think. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there, my friends. I love you a lot. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thanks again. SwitchForce.